One of the nation's largest civil rights groups is under major fire for allegedly funding the hate groups they claim to be fighting against. The Justice Department indicting the Southern Poverty Law Center on 11 counts, accusing it of secretly funneling millions of dollars to members of the very groups they say they oppose, including $3 million to white supremacist organizations, $73,000 to former KKK members, $300,000 to an Aryan Nation affiliate, and $270,000 to one of the leaders of the infamous Charlottesville rally in 2017. Here's Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche on the charges.
The SPLC was not dismantling these groups. It was instead manufacturing the extremism it purports to oppose by paying sources to stoke racial hatred. The SPLC was paying a member of the leadership group that planned the Unite the Right protest in Charlottesville, Virginia in 2017 that resulted in the death of one person and injured dozens more. This particular person being paid by the SPLC allegedly received approximately $270,000 over the course of 8 years.
The Law Center is pushing back, releasing this video statement.
This use of informants was necessary because we are no stranger to threats of violence. In 1983, our offices were firebombed, and in the years since, there have been countless credible threats against our staff. For decades, we engaged in unprecedented litigation to dismantle the Klan and other hate groups. In light of that work, we sought to protect the safety of our staff and the public. We frequently shared what we learned from informants with local and federal law enforcement, including the FBI.
Well, you may recall that former President Joe Biden said Charlottesville was why he decided to run in the first place.
He said there were, quote, some very fine people on both sides. Very fine people on both sides.
At that moment, I knew I'd have to run.
When did you know this is something that I have to do for yourself?
Charlottesville. Donald Trump said, and I quote, there are very fine people on both sides. My God.
All right, Greg, I feel like we have to start with you. Go for it.
I can't begin to say how big this story is. This is a grand jury indictment. It's huge. You could draw a direct line from Charlottesville to the Biden presidency. After all, he said it himself over and over again. Only reason why I ran is because the fine people that blah, blah, blah. And that was choreographed by the SPLC. So this makes the Jussie Smollett hoax look like amateurs. Did the media fall for it, or did they go along with it? They went along with it. They knew. None of this white supremacy movement made sense to anybody because nobody knew about this march. And then it just happened. They kept it under wraps to prevent anybody from digging into the origins of it. Nobody ever heard of these people, and then we never saw them again. It was amazing how you can have Jan 6 grannies arrested, but they could never find the tiki torches. It wasn't just a hoax or a fraud. It was a plot that resulted in people dying, an entire narrative created about these secret white supremacists at parent-teacher meetings, in the military, in the media. If you didn't kneel before George Floyd, you were probably part of the white supremacy movement. They even came up with a hate map to trick you into thinking hate was so prevalent that they needed a map. They didn't have a hate map for Antifa because Antifa wasn't even part of the list, but Focus on the Family was, PragerU. They had Libs of TikTok, Michael Flynn. They even labeled Trump a catalyst for white nationalism, using his comments from Charlottesville, which they helped create, to then breed him a racist. I was listed, Jesse, as part of the hard right ecosystem. And to me, that's stolen valor because I don't deserve that role. And plus, I didn't even pay for it. I didn't get paid for this. So America was running dangerously low on racism, and that's bad for business when your business is a racist smear. This is all this is. If your business is about demonizing people with racism and you don't have it, you got to make it up. They're like the killer nurse, that doses all of her patients so she can pretend she's the savior as they start dying, except they let people die here. because that actually enables them to keep going. If a right-wing group actually paid leftists like Antifa, BLM, Venezuelan drug gangs to terrorize citizens to kind of underscore their value, it would be a huge story. But we never had to do that because all of that was real. You know, we didn't have to pay off the left to cause violence. It's a testament to conservatives that you had to create the hate that wasn't there because we didn't supply it. United States, least racist country in the history of the world. We knew it, but in the last 10 years, the left made it sound like somehow we were the very worst thing on the planet.
You might remember in 2012, the Family Research Council was shot up.
Yeah.
And in court documents, the guy said it was because the Southern Poverty Law Center had labeled them a hate group.
Yeah, Charlie Kirk was assassinated, and he was mentioned many times by the SPLC.
Could you, the control room, could you play Todd Blanche? This is interesting, Kennedy. Blanche is saying that the Biden administration closed this investigation.
This investigation was opened during the Biden administration and then mysteriously closed. I really don't have any information about why it was closed. And then we started again last year, the FBI did, working with the U.S. Attorney in Alabama. And it's extraordinarily egregious.
I think the Pink Panther could figure this out.
Yeah, this is pretty clear, and Greg did a very good job of laying it out. Finding and funding more of the most extreme racists in the country was very profitable for the Southern Poverty Law Center. In fact, after Charlottesville, they hit a windfall, a fundraising windfall, and they knew they were going to did it. It was more successful than all of their evil marketing geniuses could have imagined, and their endowment was closer to $700 million after Charlottesville. So it really was one of the most profitable things that had ever happened to them. But what occurred to so many people was, you know, they had not seen this sort of coordinated white supremacy in their neighborhoods, even though they were being told constantly, this constant onslaught by the SPLC that they were there, they were prevalent. And in fact, it was Biden's FBI who told us that white supremacists were the biggest threat to the country. You know, it wasn't Antifa, it wasn't some of these Islamist groups who were funneling talking points to students at places like Columbia.
Can I add something to that? Because the Biden administration said that the largest section of white supremacists could be found in the U.S. military.
Yes.
And then they said they would do an investigation. And during the Biden administration, the Department of Defense, as it was called then, came out with its report. And guess what? They found none. But they buried the report like on a Friday night at 9 p.m. And it's like, we tried to bring it up and it hardly got any attention. One thing that's interesting, Jessica, it's like they were doing one of those fake going out of business sales. So they were doing this thing and then they got $1 million from George Clooney. Tim Cook gave them $1 million. They raked in the cash out of all this.
Yeah, they're definitely a well-funded organization. I don't see how we get from we flipped people within these organizations and paid them for it to white supremacy is made up and that it's a complete fallacy. And it's not just the Biden administration that said it was the greatest threat. It was in the Trump administration, too. Chris Wray said this.
That's BS.
Okay.
Don't play that with us.
It's literally a quote. So, listen.
No one believed it. They only said it.
Okay, no one believed it. You're right. No one believed it, but it's just what the guy said under oath in testimony. This is a procedure that law enforcement does on every level, where they flip people within organizations.
They're not law enforcement. They're not law enforcement.
No, but they take information and they feed it. He said it. They feed it back to local and including the FBI. And we know that the FBI does this. They work with informants all the time
not
for
the
drug
FBI.
trafficking. So that's the problem?
Yes, that is the problem. In fact, that is one of the tools that the mainstream left media is trying to use to defend Southern Poverty Law Center, saying that, well, they were doing what the FBI does. The FBI uses criminal informants in order to prosecute criminals. The Southern Poverty Law Center was paying their enemies in order to raise money off of the existence of their enemies.
But also to give information to the FBI so they could do something. But that...
Do you actually believe what you're saying, or are you just doing this for the fun of the show?
No, I don't think this is fun at all, actually.
We're all somehow connected to the SPLC in one way or another. We've all been smeared by them, and if you're defending them, you better believe it.
I actually said Please explain to me how we got to white supremacy, organized white supremacy.
Where have you been
is
for the
fake-
last 5 or 6
fake
years?
Because of what we just found out potentially about the SPLC, and we'll see how the court case plays out. That was my question. That I
Didn't sound
answered
like a question.
I phrased it as a question on purpose, and I did the uptick in my voice at the end, which indicates that I have asked a question.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.